Hey everyone, my name is Youssef, and my goal with this video is to help you hit 5K a month with your mobile app. So I'm just gonna get straight into it because you're probably falling into this vicious cycle. What is this vicious cycle? The vicious cycle is the indie hacker trap, where you basically spend a bunch of time building a product and you finally build it after months of preparation and building features and all that stuff, and then eventually you get to the selling part and you're like, damn, you basically struggle with it. You don't know how to sell your app. Marketing seems like such a hurdle. You have no clue how to do TikTok or UGC like marketing. Maybe you try to post on Reddit or whatever. It doesn't work. So this is the cycle that I've been through myself, and I'm here to help you essentially overcome. So this is especially more relevant with vibe coding. Why? Because basically with vibe coding, it's made building even easier, and so you can spend so much time now and feel like you're making a lot of progress because you're building all these features, but eventually, yes, you're faster, but you're still at zero revenue, unfortunately. And maybe you get to the point where you post a little Reddit thread, whatever, you get a good amount of views, and then you get some downloads, but then you're still stuck at zero. And so the goal of this video is to really help you get to 5K a month and to overcome all of these challenges. Okay, and I'm going to share with you how I overcome those challenges, and hopefully you can learn from this. But you're probably thinking like, Youssef, who the hell are you and why should we listen to you? So I have built many apps. Okay, these are just the last few apps I've worked on, and I've also like worked with people on if you recognize this is like YC co-founder matching platform. I've worked with the VC-backed startups. I've worked with bootstrapped founders. I've done basically a lot of stuff, and a few of these are my own apps. A few of these are apps with co-founders, and I spent a lot of time working on these apps, and none of them worked out. A lot of them, at least for me, none of them worked out, and eventually decided to keep moving on from project to project, hopping from one thing to the next, and with no success. And so eventually I was like, okay, I need to figure shit out, and I need to make money, and I started doing things that I wouldn't normally do, and that's what I'm going to be sharing in the upcoming videos. But eventually that led me to have these two apps. One of them is called Neuro, and one of them is called Sauce. Neuro peaked around 13K a month last summer, and that was with a co-founder. And Sauce, I'm building completely on my own, and that I just hit 7K in April or last month. We're in May right now, so last month I did 7K in revenue, and the profit margins on both of these apps are above 80%. I think Neuro was like 90%, and Sauce was, I think, is currently around 80%, 75-80%. And so these are relatively profitable apps, and I finally was able to actually get to the point where I'm happy with the progress that I'm making, and I feel like I've kind of understood it. And it's also, I did not do this alone. It's thanks to these two guys. Maybe you will recognize them, but I've worked with both Blake Anderson and Arib, and I've learned, whether directly or indirectly from them, all the things that they did, and what worked for them and what didn't. And I basically try to reproduce all of that on my own, and that's leading me to a little bit of success. Obviously, I'm not like at 100K a month yet, but I'm planning on getting there, and I feel like nonetheless I can still help you as a first-time founder get to 5, 10, 15K a month. Okay, and so the first video we're going to talk about, in this first video we're going to talk about, is what to build. Okay, it's very easy to end up spending so much time on building something because of shiny object syndrome. You kind of see something and you're like, oh my god, okay, this makes sense, I want to work on this. You work on it for a few months, and then you're like, actually I don't really want to work on this, it doesn't really work for me, and then you give up, right? And I've learned that the main lesson in entrepreneurship is not to give up. You may fail many times, but if you don't give up, you will eventually win. I genuinely believe that. And so here in this video I'm going to talk to you about the 4 main things. I'll show you right here the 4 main things that you need in order to pick the right idea, right? And I'm going to be using Sauce, which is my most recent app, as an example for what to build. And if you guys don't know, Sauce is basically a RizGPT like product, so similar to the Plug AI RizGPT, but I've implemented also a Duolingo like course, and I'm going to talk about all these things in the 4 sections. Okay, so section 1, taste. So it's really important that whatever you decide to build, you have a certain level of taste in that space. Okay, when you're building a product where you don't really know what's going on in that space, that's not really for you, it just makes everything 10 times harder. So this is a pretty obvious one, but for in my case with Sauce, I was already like, I don't know if you will recognize any of these YouTubers or influencers, but this is Jago Day, Tristan Social, this is Trailis. These are all like Riz dating, flirting coaches, or in that niche at least, and are making content about raising girls and stuff like that. And my algorithm was already feeding me so much of that, and they are constantly like showing you or talking to girls, showing you showing different ways to raise them up, and I found myself like already like finding that content super entertaining, and I had developed a bit of taste of like, okay, this is a good video, it's not a good video. I'm getting a bunch of creators, similar creators, making that type of content, and even myself, I've used dating apps before. I've spent quite a bit of time on them, so I felt like quite a strong affinity to the dating and Riz space, and I felt like I had a certain level of taste. I had used the different apps like RizGPT before, and so that was something that was basically just very obvious to me of like, okay, if I were to build something in this niche, I would be able to know what to do, what creators to hire. If I'm making content myself, I'm going to be making content. What type of content resonates with my audience? I am that audience to begin with, so I know what type of content I need to create, stuff like that. And so I think that taste is super important when you're building it, because that will determine how well you can basically execute on that when it comes to hiring creators, making content yourself, building new features, all that stuff like that. Okay, great. So that's taste. Number 2 is competitors. So I really believe that if there is no app in the space that you want to make that's making anywhere at least north of 100K, then it's probably not the right space for you. Especially as a first-time founder, because as a first-time founder, we're going to make so many mistakes. We don't really know what we're doing, and so by seeing other apps that are either like executing on their content strategy or building features or their onboarding, all that stuff like that, we can copy a lot of that, and so and kind of learn from what they're doing and replicate it for our own and get hopefully similar results. So there's a website called Sensor Tower. If you don't know it, you can go in and you can type any app name, and I just typed in ChatGPT, and you can see that ChatGPT. Of course, take these numbers with a grain of salt. They're not super accurate, but they give you a bit of a benchmark. Where ChatGPT got 20 million downloads last month and made $243 million in revenue, which is insane. And so you want to be looking at apps that are, if you have an idea for an app, hopefully there's like a few different apps that are making over at least 100K. You will probably want to aim for like 500K or a million, to be honest. But anything above 100K, I would say, is like a decent start. And then you can. And so these 3 apps, Plug, Riz, and Wizard, were all from not only founders that I was familiar with, and so I followed them on Twitter and stuff like that. But also these apps were all making over $100,000 a month, and at their peaks, and some of them are still today. And so that's why I was like, okay, I know that if I can replicate this, and even if I get just a tiny fraction of their success, I can probably get to 5, 10, 15, 20K a month. You know what I mean? And so that's basically telling you that there is demand for this product. A lot of companies are making money off of this, and so this is an opportunity for you to enter. Now, again, I think it's great to build completely novel products and doing new stuff, but I think that especially when you're trying to get your first W, your first win, you're going to have higher chances of success if you're more so not necessarily a copycat. I don't believe in like doing a one-on-one copy, and I'll talk to you about that in criteria number 4. But I believe that if you have a certain kind of like mentor or like a guideline of like, hey, this is what an app that's a competitor to yours that's doing really well, this is how much money they're making and how well they're executing, and you can take that and apply it to yourself and tweak some stuff and hopefully make it your own, but hopefully get close to how much money they're making, or at least make a fraction of that. And if they're making a lot of money, a fraction of that is still a decent amount. Cool. So that's criteria number 2. Criteria number 3 is to build for yourself, right? The reason why you want to build for yourself is because you want to be you want to be your own power user. If I don't use my app, and I've built many apps that I didn't end up using because I was on the target market, I found that it was so hard to actually like, number one, get the motivation and drive and like energy to actually use it, because I don't really care about the product. It's not built for me. So how am I going to actually, care about it? I think it comes down to care. If you're your own user and you actually find your product useful, then you will care about the product, and so the usage will then give you data, right? You'll find bugs before your users tell you, because you're using your app every day. And then what you can do from that is you can then pivot if necessary, build new features, use that data of like, oh, there's a bug here. Oh, I'm seeing that I actually don't use this part of the app, and this is a great example. This is a screenshot of my database, and in my database, this is the first version of my app was called Locker Talk, and this version of the app was essentially a cold approach app. So it would help guys with overcoming their social anxiety and talking to women. And so you can see that I was using my app relatively regularly. Now, what I understood afterwards is that even though I wanted to use my app every day, I had like blockers for whatever reason. And I realized that actually, even though I'm like the main user of my app, I'm still not using it daily. I'm using it, okay, I was using it somewhat consistently here, and then I skip for like 10 days, and I'm using it again, and then skip for a few days. And so I realized, okay, even me, who is the owner of the app, who wants to use this app, who I built this for myself, I'm not using my app every day. So there is a problem here. Why am I not using my app every day? What is the blocker? And I can't expect other people to use my app every day if I'm not the one using my app every day myself. You know what I mean? So at that point, I was like, okay, I need to change something, and I pivoted from Locker Talk to Sauce. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that like if you're using your app every day, you'll find that like there's certain things that are maybe work better than others and stuff like that. And so then you're like, okay, I'm seeing that. Maybe this feature doesn't really make sense. Maybe I need to change to this. Actually, I prefer this part of the app a lot, and I want to pivot and stuff like that. But if you're not using your app, you're honestly setting yourself up for failure. There are plenty of founders who build successful companies, not building for themselves. But again, we're trying to increase our chances of success. And so, as a first-time founder, you're going to deal with so many mistakes and so many like obstacles that you want to have the least amount of friction. And by building a product for yourself, you're reducing that friction again. By making sure that competitors are making a lot of money, you're reducing friction again because you don't have to figure out stuff out on your own. And by having taste in that space, you're also making sure that it's going to be super easy for you to find out which creators to hire, make content yourself, etc., and knowing what features to build. Finally, the question number 4 is innovation. Here, this is a kind of a culmination of everything I talked about, specifically with regards to taste and with building for yourself. If you build an app that you have taste in and that you're building for yourself, you'll know what's missing, right? So when I looked at Riz, I looked at Wizard, I looked at Plug, I was like, okay, these are all apps that are helping you generate replies, which is great, but that's not really like teaching me how to flirt. It's not really actually improving my skills as a seducer, or my ability to attract a woman. It's actually just like helping me. It's giving me the answer. It's not, but it's not teaching me, right? So giving me the answer doesn't actually lead me to learn, right? So give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man a fish, and you feed him for life. And so at this point, I was like, okay, all these apps are making a lot of money, but they're not actually making people better flirters. That's what it is at its essence. And so I was thinking, okay, what if we still kept the essence of RizGPT or Plug and all of this like AI texting generation for like that instant dopamine hit of like, okay, I just want the answer, give it to me. But we combined it with the dating coaches that are kind of like teaching you how to overcome your social anxiety, how to talk to girls, how to build attraction, push-pull dynamics, all that stuff like that. And we turn it into a gamified thing with like Duolingo, which has been super successful in like teaching people how to learn a new language. And so if we combine learning a new language with dating coaches and teaching them how to flirt with an app like RizGPT or Plug AI, then you end up building sauce. And that's what I felt was missing in the market. And that's how I was able to differentiate myself from the rest of the apps and make basically people want to convert and get more value from it, right? Because if they just download Plug or they just download Riz, they're only getting like AI replies. But if they download my app, they're not only getting the replies, but they're also learning through a course that I created and through a gamified way of going through that course, how to build attraction, why the lines that the AI is generating make sense, and why you would want to have that. And so that way I kind of like carve a piece of the market for myself, and I'm not a copycat because I'm not like actually just doing a replica, and I'm actually creating something that I'm proud of, that has my own taste and my own innovation into it, and that way I kind of not only feel proud about building this, but also I have a way to differentiate myself in the market, and then be able to kind of like have different content angles. When people ask you, okay, why would I use your app instead of Riz? Why would I use your app instead of this? You have something to say, and you know that it's good what you created because you have taste, because you're building for yourself, because you're using that product yourself. Overall, I think that if you combine the taste aspect with building for yourself, with innovation, and making sure that you're in a market where there are competitors that are building in that space and that are making a lot of money, then I think that you can really like set yourself up for success. Now, this just will lead you to creating the right idea, or at least an idea that you're not going to give up in 2 months, right? At the end of the day, you really have to be able to last a year, maybe 2 years, before you can even consider like selling the app and building enough financial history to sell the app. But if you like really give up after 2-3 months because you didn't pick the right idea to begin with, well, you basically set yourself up for failure. And so that's why I think that like having these 4 components to it will lead you to being able to build the right product And then we can get into all the other stuff: onboarding, paywalls, distribution that needs to kind of be also be there. But at least this way, you know that you're not going to give up 6 months from now, because this product actually you use yourself, you care about it, you have taste, you want to improve on this in this space. You know that there are other people making money in it, so it's like if them, then why not you? You know what I mean? This, you're as qualified, assuming you followed all these instructions, you're as qualified for this for to build this app as they are. So hopefully that gave you a bit of insight on what to build and why it's so important to set yourself up for success by picking the right app to begin with to build. And in the next video, I'm going to be talking about onboarding and how to set up the right onboarding to be able to convert users into your free trial or into your hard paywall. All right, thanks guys.